And we are back. We are live here in Orlando, Florida at Ignite, Channel 9 Live. I'm Christina Warren, and I'm joined by my good friend, Sonia Cruft. Sonia, how's your Ignite been?
It's been epic. It's been an amazing event and great to see everybody.
Yeah, so what we wanted to talk about, and it's kind of great that we're doing this the last day,
know, right?
honestly, because I think that this is a topic that's going to resonate with a lot of people, especially if whether you're here in person or you're watching at home through Channel 9 or tech communities at Microsoft.com, is a topic that is coming up more and more in tech communities, which is burnout, and the fact that we put so much of ourselves into our work that it can have negative impacts on our life. And you actually gave a great standing room only session about this topic this year and at Ignite a couple of days ago. We think the video is online. If it's not online now at techcommunities.microsoft.com, it will be up soon. Give us just a little bit. Give me a little bit of the overview of what your talk was about.
Sure, absolutely. And so I started by talking about my personal story of a time where I got to a really dark place because of stresses from work and some things that had gone on in my personal life as well. And it's a topic that, as you said, we need to start talking more about it in our communities. You know, we hear the high-profile cases of people who get to those dark places, and we need to open up the doors and encourage each other to have conversations about it. So the talk presentation, which you can view online, talks about what that feels like for you. What it can look like if you're seeing colleagues that are going through that, and some tips to help yourself and some tips to reach out and help other people that you work with.
And I don't want you to have to get into your personal story here because obviously people can just check things out. But if you, what are some of the signs that people should maybe look for, maybe in others or even themselves that they might experience in burnout?
Okay, so some of the things that I experienced was I just kind of lost my enjoyment of life. It felt like I was living life in black and white and everything was pretty dull and nothing was interesting or exciting anymore. I had trouble switching off. And I got to a point where it's the cumulative effect of being part of an on-call roster over a number of years where my heart would literally sink if the phone rang or if I got a new email notification. And it's interesting because they actually say that a lot of the signs and symptoms that you see in yourself are really similar to people who suffer from PTSD. So in our colleagues, we want to be looking out for things that are outside of their norm. And so one of those things could be when they withdraw from their normal interactions. And so it's not necessarily the people who don't always turn up to the social events, right? Especially in tech, we're a very introverted community.
Sure.
But watch out and understand what people's norms are. And it could be little things like they're not engaging in the group chat as much, or they're not replying to the group emails and giving their opinion. It's a big warning sign. And just performance that's out of the normal for them as well. The challenge with identifying it in other people is that we expect to be able to see a breakdown. We expect that we can see when someone's falling to pieces, but in reality, burnout often looks like coping because we put a smile on our face and we get ourselves out the door and we get to work and we fulfill those commitments to the people to get the work done because that's just what we do.
What are some of the things if somebody is experiencing this, or if they see a colleague experience? What are some of the coping mechanisms? To get through this and get to a better place.
Yeah. So for yourself, I joke in my presentation that there's 3 easy steps, right? It's green kale smoothies, yoga on the beach, and take a vacation with bonus points if you take your dog with you as well. So
take your dog with you.
Yeah. So we say that it's as simple as that. It's not as simple as that, and those things are all really good in themselves. The first thing that happens when we get busy and stressed and burnt out is we don't eat properly. So good nutrition and all those other things are certainly really good components, but they're not it's not just that simple. We talk about just talk to somebody. Like if you're feeling down, just talk to somebody. But you're not about to go and tell your boss that you hate your job. Right. And you're certainly not about to go and tell a stranger in HR that you hate your job either.
Right.
And so we need to get to a place where people are comfortable pushing back and setting their boundaries. We're really good at organising our work. As technical people, we plan things and we have deadlines and we work to schedules and we organise our tasks. We need to do that with the rest of our lives as well. So we need to schedule in time for rest. We need to schedule in time for exercise. We need to block in some weekends in our month that are going to be family time, even if that's throwing some food in the cooler and taking off, for a day trip somewhere in the car. And so we need to get a little bit more disciplined about organising that in our lives too. As far as reaching out and helping our colleagues, that's a really tough one. And I've had some interesting conversations with managers, which sounds like it's going to be another talk topic, about how they can help their direct reports without getting too personally and emotionally involved in those. But what I want to say is one of the biggest things is be the example. Set the example, be the person who stays home when they're sick, and be the person who pushes back against deadlines and resourcing issues, because you might think that things that you can handle, but you're fighting for other people in your team who might not feel strong enough to stand up against that stuff. And I also want to encourage you, as well as watching out for each other, is to be brave enough to have the conversations. And instead of just asking people if they're okay, because if someone asks you if you're okay, your natural reaction is to say,
"Oh, I'm fine."
Yeah, of course, yeah. And so there's a couple of techniques that I teach in my talk about how you can open up that conversation with somebody's permission to find out what's really going on in their world and how they're feeling.
Fantastic information. And I'm going to kind of go back to something you talked about, setting boundaries. And that's so important. And I think it's hard for all of us in technical fields to do that, because technology has made it so easy to remain connected all the time. You always have email on your phone. You have, Slack or Microsoft Teams or something else. You can always be pinged, so the work day doesn't go away at normal times.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, being in a remote team. So the team that I work in, I'm literally on the other side of the Pacific Ocean.
You're like 15 hours, ahead. Like it's tomorrow afternoon.
I know, right? Yeah. So I do joke that when I come to America, they're like, I'm time traveling, because I work in the future with the Dateline. It's quite fun. But the challenge for me was, like, part of this new team, I woke up on a Saturday morning and I have 22 new unread emails in my inbox, because that's what it said on my phone badge. And I'm looking at this going, I can't deal. Like, I'm a person who I cannot handle that. I don't know what's going on. I'm like, how am I supposed to relax over my weekend knowing that there are 22 new messages in my inbox? Like, is there a fire? Has the world fallen apart?
Right.
So I actually got a section in my talk about taming those digital attention seekers. And one of the first things I did was I took off that unread badge on that icon on my phone. So now I call it Schrodinger's inbox. Right? I don't know whether or not there are emails in there or there are not emails in there. And I just don't know. And I'm not going to check until I'm in a place where I'm actually doing work and that's the right time again.
That's great, and that's a really good idea. And actually, I like that Schrodinger's inbox. We should coin that if it hasn't already been done. Credit to Sonia on that. But what about? I mean, because you pointed this out kind of at the beginning. If IT pros and people working, kind of in ops spaces, a lot of people at this conference, it makes it even harder to kind of separate, because you're often the person on call.
Yep.
So part of your job is often it's hard enough for some of us as developers in other fields, and it's not just tech, to turn things off. But when part of your job is to, have on-call time, do you have any tips for setting boundaries even when you have on-call?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a lot of that does come down to workplace support. So on-call rostering, we need to make sure that people have got good enough breaks between the times that they are expected to be available 24/7. But one of the other things I really like to see is making sure that we've got what I call a B team. And so what you don't want to do is you don't want to add a lot more resources to this on-call team, so that when there's an outage at 11 p.m. at night, you've got 10 people trying to research the error or trying to get the systems up. What you need to do is make sure that you've got a couple of frontline workers, because you need to be able to respond quickly to the business. But I want people to make sure that they've got a B team, and the whole purpose of the B team is they are the rest and recovery team, so that when one team's been working through the night, they they come in, get a brief and an update on where things are at, and they take over. And the people that have been working all night can literally clock off and know that it's in good hands and somebody else is taking over. We don't tend to do that very well. And what happens is we get these hero statements where we have people going, oh my gosh, I had this Severity 1 outage and I worked literally through the night for 3 days. Like, that's not good. And another tip in my talk is about, from a culture perspective, can we stamp out these superhero statements? Can we stop holding these in high regard? So if someone comes and says to you, I worked right through the night for 2 nights in a row, instead of going, oh, that's amazing, I want you to go, that is terrible. How can we make sure that this never happens again?
I love that, because I think you're right. We tend to laud and applaud and high five each other. So, I it almost becomes like, a bragging rights. It's like, oh, look at how much time I did. I did 36 hours straight. It's like, no, that's awful.
Yeah, it is awful.
I think that's a really good point. One of the things that I've noticed when this topic comes up, and when you and I were even talking about this before, as soon as you start talking about burnout and sharing your own stories, more and more people open up. And I think that goes back to your initial point, which is we need to be talking about this more because it's impacting so many people. Do you have any resources or communities you might be able to turn people towards if they want to get more information, but also reach out to others to maybe get some support?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, it's the start of a conversation. The best thing about my talk here at Microsoft Ignite were the amount of people that came up to me afterwards and said, thank you, I'm going through this, or thank you, I know someone in my team and I'm trying to figure out how to support them. But I had so many people turn around and say, we're going to take this back to our organizations, we're going to show our managers this recording, and we're going to have the conversation about what we're going to do in our organization. So please watch that recording and carry on the conversation within your own organizations. I've got another really great resource because we are technical people, and so burnout is one of those things that this feeling stuff, like, it's really sort of hard to quantify. And I know when I go back to IT operations, when I've got a system and literally a service or a system that's degraded, I want to have a look at the performance stats and I want to see what it's doing. So when I go and implement some changes, I want to see a change in those metrics, all right? It's not as easy to do with mental health. So in Australia, there is a website, and it's freely available to anybody to register. It's called mycompass.org.au, and mycompass.org.au is a psychologist-backed website that lets you benchmark through a series of self-assessments how you're feeling and where your mental health is at. And there are great resources and videos and activities that you can do. But the great thing about that is if you do that now, you can then do that at a later date to see whether or not there's been any changes in that benchmarking, or if you're looking to implement some of those strategies, you can re-benchmark yourself and see if they've made a difference.
I love that. And because I think you're right, so many of us, we want something quantifiable. It makes it easier to kind of follow things along. I feel like there should be like an Apple Watch app, the same way like tells you to stand up or breathe, should say, check in on what you're feeling and show, at the end of the week.
There's an app idea.
Yeah, like that's somebody build that, please.
Yeah, please.
Everyone, please check out Sonia's talk. It's up at techcommunities.microsoft.com.
Yeah.
And start talking about this and let's continue this conversation because it's so important, and that's the only way things are going to improve and get better. Yeah. Sonia, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me, and I just encourage people to keep on having those conversations.
All right. We will be back. We're going to go to our next live stream, and we will be back in a bit.